Continuing part 3, the story of the scroll, the curve. Keeping watch at night. It is now the eve of the 15th of Nisan, the middle of the night, the Chatsoth. When half of the night is gone, the part of increasing darkness, as it is also the part of the waxing moon, as there also is the waxing development in everything in the world and in the universe. Now the other part is coming, the part of the waning night, the waning moon, the part of development reverting to the origin. At this turning point in the night, there is great perturbation everywhere on earth and in heaven. All is on the alert, is ready. In that night, the king cannot sleep. Ancient lore has it that here in the first place is meant God. The fasting and suffering of the Jehudim penetrates to God. Therefore, God sits down on the throne of the Rahamim, whereas in the first half of the night, he had sat on the throne of the law, the din. It passeth understanding this going together of the attitude of the Jehudim with the attitude of God, the structure of creation. At that time of the decision, there at that turning point, there is of its own accord the Easter meal of Israel, the lean unleavened meal, the fasting of the Jehudim and the recession of the night and of the moon. The tendency of nature and attitude of man coincide, one half with the other. Because God does not sleep, everything is in turmoil. According to ancient lore, God does not sleep, naturally, but people in the exile hold that God sleeps because God acts from secrecy, from the Nistar. Because God does not sleep, Haman too is in full activity. He prepares everything for the coming 8th day. He is on his way to the king to get the verdict of Mordecai's hanging issued from the king. That night Esther does not sleep either. She prepares the meal for the next day, the meal at which the secret is to be revealed, the secret which will cause the reverse of everything, the secret least expected, the absolutely unbelievable. And that night the Jehudim did not sleep. They taxed Mordecai with having exceeded the limit. Why not give in to Haman ever so little? Why this consistency? One cannot live in that way, can one? The Jehudim go for Mordecai, and Mordecai knows he could not have acted differently. Hence, Mordecai does not sleep either that night. He learns with the children, the Tinakoth, and their suffering penetrates to God. God hears it like the bleating of sheep and goats. Moses points out to God that they are the Tinakoth of the Jehudim. The angels think it is the downfall of the world. They are ignorant of the reversal. They don't know the way of development, hence neither do they know the reversal. When God hears it is the children that suffer, his throne shakes, and together with it everything in creation quakes and trembles. Then the fathers of Israel, the patriarchs, appear before God. At the point of return, they are awake, they are present, they are known. They are recognized as the root, living with God, the phenomenon of the Avri in the exile. Now God sends the angel Michael to the world to act. Who is like God now becomes a presence in the world. It is Michael that disturbs the sleep of Ahasuerus. The latter simply cannot understand how it is that Esther had also invited Haman. Michael makes the king dream that Haman is seeking his life, and Haman wants to seize his crown. And in token thereof, Michael makes him see in the dream that Haman will come and ask him as much, even that very night. The king feels forlorn. If Haman too is against him, and Esther invites this Haman to the meal as the only guest, who is then for him, the king? Everything pertaining to natural law has forsaken the king. He commands to bring the book of the records. How had the world come into being? What was the cause of one thing and another? The king asks one question after another, and he wants to come to rest. All of a sudden, things do not tally in this world of natural law. He is aware that something important is at hand, that he is threatened by another world, a new world. The book of records reads itself, as ancient lore remarks at the hand of the literal text. When an individual is in this condition, the story of causes, links, and effects reads itself. If the world is in this condition, the substance of things reveals itself. It is the condition when one feels that Everything established since time immemorial is disappearing. It is the condition in which one feels forlorn, when one wants to know what was the beginning, what is the purpose of things. Reading the book of records happens of its own accord. He that serves Ahasuerus as reader is Shimshai, the same one who had the building of the wall stopped. The thing at issue was the wall of Jerusalem, as part of the rebuilding of the temple. In keeping with his own nature, Ahasuerus has for reader of the records a man who cannot tolerate the rebuilding of the temple. Otherwise, how could the world of Ahasuerus function? While reading the records, this Shimshai presently comes across the story of Bigtan and Teres. Naturally, the story is out of keeping with the man who has interfered with the building of the temple. The latter wants to suppress Mordecai's reality. He does not want anybody to know that in the beginning the two meant to destroy the world, and that it was only through Mordecai, the Ivri, that the world was preserved. Non-suppression would imply that the temple of the Ivri was to be rebuilt completely and not kept unfinished. But at the moment of everything awakening, all things suppressed are also recalled. Ancient lore has it that Gabriel wrote down again the words struck out by Shimshai. Another story tells us how the skipped passage of the scroll rolled back and read itself of its own accord to the king. At that moment, in the middle of the night, at the end of one half, the foundations of everything come in view again. It is like the final judgment. What was a secret will now be revealed, things suppressed, all that one had rather not remember because it does not fit in with the pattern of the half world, at that very moment comes into prominence. Now the king hears the story of Bigtan and Teres again, for it had been suppressed in himself too. Shimshai pertains to the king. He is a kind of chronicler in a class apart, matching Ahasuerus, a chronicler who knows what he has to suppress. But now the king asks, what has happened to Mordecai? For it is because of Mordecai that we still exist. In the very beginning, the myrrh has been active, has not it? The answer is that Mordecai has not met with gratitude in the world, for he too had been suppressed. Now the king is highly alarmed. Now acknowledgments are due. To be sure, the Sadikim get their reward in the other world. Otherwise, their golden table would be rickety. On behalf of this world, Mordecai had acted gratuitously in the case of Bigtan and Teres. He still was in the state of most terrible alarm because of it. Even now the Jehudim taxed him on account of his attitude towards development, towards the world of duality. Who is in the outer court, the king asks, for he is going to give Mordecai the reward right now. Haman, they tell him. Haman wants to see the king at once. It is just past midnight. The second half has started, that half in which Mordecai will be hanged at the gallows tree of 50 cubits high. As is the nature of development, Haman is inclined to be precipitous. There is not a second to be lost. Let him come, says the king. Herewith the curve is accomplished. Now the reversal will come like an avalanche over individual man and the world.